Today's headline is a triumph of Christian forgiveness. It says, we quote the appended characteristic incident from James Jeffrey Roche's forthcoming life of John Boyle O'Reilly, Castles, New York. At one of the stations to which he was occasionally sent with messages, there was an overseer, warden, or watchdog of some sort who chose to be an exception to all humankind by conceiving at sight a bitter dislike to young O'Reilly. On their very first meeting, he looked hard at the newcomer and said, "Young man, you know what you are here for," adding with an oath, "I will help you to know it." From that time on, he watched his victim sharply, hoping to catch him in some infraction of the many regulations governing the convict settlement. At last his time came. O'Reilly one day was a few minutes later in making his trip. He found the overseer waiting for him, watch in hand. "You were late so many minutes," he said. "You were reported." Among the penalties of being reported was one that the offender should not be allowed to send or receive a letter for 6 months. A few days after this incident, the overseer called O'Reilly into his office. He held in his hand a letter, heavily bordered in black, which he had just perused. O'Reilly knew that his mother at home in Ireland had been dangerously ill for some time. The letter probably bore the news of her death, but it might contain tidings of a less bitter loss. Nobody in the place except the overseer knew its contents. He said, "O'Reilly, here is a letter for you." The prisoner said thank you and held out his hand for it. The overseer looked at him for a moment, then tossing the letter into a drawer said, "You will get it in 6 months." When at the end of 6 months he received the letter, he found that it confirmed his worst fears. The mother whom he had loved and idolized was dead. Listening to this story years afterward from the lips of its victim, I asked him why he had never published the name of the cold-blooded wretch for the execration of humanity. He smiled and said that he did not bear the fellow any malice, that a man who would do a deed of that kind must be insane and irresponsible, a being toward whom one could not cherish animosity. To a request that the name might be given to somebody of less magnanimous soul, he replied, "I do not know his name now. I have forgotten it. For that reason, the name does not appear in these pages." This article originally came from the Boston Pilot. This story comes from the great state of Minnesota, being reported in the Prison Mirror of May 28, 1891. Thank you for joining us today. If you want to continue to uncover all of America's lost and forgotten history, then remember before you leave to hit the subscribe button, hit the notification bell, and remember to like and comment below. And we will see you next time on Americana Archives.